All right, guys, here we go. Quadratic formula. Again, I always tell everybody, of course, math is important, but this quadratic formula is used all the time. And again, the quadratic formula is something someone proved that was true when you want to solve a quadratic formula, or when you want to solve a quadratic equation. So let's start out with this. The general form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. All right. A is obviously the number in front of the square term. B is the number in front of the x term, and c is the constant. All right, so all you're doing is you're plugging those numbers into this formula. All right, you're plugging those numbers into this formula, and then you're just simplifying the formula. All right, now why is the formula necessary? The formula is necessary because not all equations can be solved by taking the square root or by factoring. All right, you guys worked last week a lot on taking the square root and solving by factoring and using the zero property. Right, so this week is just a little bit harder because these problems don't factor. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate this. If you've already done the odds, then you have a good understanding. If you haven't done the odds, you've got a lot of work to do and a lot of work to make up. So first step is, I think it's important to write A equals 2, B equals 8, and C equals 3. And again, remember, the most important thing is as soon as you don't understand a step, just shout out, all right? And I will slow down and repeat or explain. Now, the equation, I think it's important to learn the equation. So every time I'm going to write it, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now it's a matter of just doing our substitutions, all right? So x equals negative, and I'm just going to demonstrate all the substitutions for now, and then after this I won't. All right, I'll be expecting you to do some of the arithmetic in your head. So this now is a straight substitution. So I just substitute in the numbers in for the variables. And now we're just going to use our arithmetic. All right. So from here, x equals negative 8 plus or minus 64 minus 4 times 2 is 8 times 3 is 24 all over 4. All right. X equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 4. Now my question to you guys is, stop me if you're having a problem. So if I have any questions with that so far, just do the arithmetic. All right, now the last thing we have to worry about is, can I break down the square root? All right, and the answer is yes. And the reason why it's yes is because, and I'll really go slow on this, 40 can be written as 4 times 10. Now the reason why you use 4 is because 4 is a perfect square. So what is the square root of 4? We say the square root of 4 is 2. So I put negative 8 plus or minus 2 radical 10 over 4. Now, believe it or not, we have one more thing to do, right? We first have to look at the 8 and the 2 and the 4. And all of those numbers are divisible by 2. So we'll want to divide the 8 by 2, divide the 2 by 2, and divide the 4 by 2. Now notice I did not say divide the 10 by 2 because that is an irrational number. The numbers that are highlighted here are rational numbers, so they can be divided. All right, now when I divide that, final answer, negative 4 plus or minus 1 radical 10 over 2. All right. Anybody have any questions with that? Now, some of my kids in the last class said, can I reduce the 4 and the 2 now? And the answer is no, you cannot reduce those, because in order to reduce through addition and subtraction, both numbers, or I should say all 3 numbers, have to be divisible by the same number. All right. So that right here is your final answer. All right. X equals negative 4 plus or minus 1 radical 10 over 2. Now, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, because some kids asked me in the other class about this. So I want to say there are 2 solutions here. And I'm going to put the first solution is negative 4 plus radical 10 over 2. The second solution would be negative 4 minus radical 10 over 2. It's just an easier way. Instead of writing that, we can just write it as one solution, negative 4 plus or minus radical 10 over 2. Okay? So does anybody have any questions now? With the substitution, plugging numbers in, simplifying the radical, then simplifying the fractions. Nobody?
Mr. Straw,
Yes, sir.
is this going to be a video?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Oh, hold on a minute. I'm so glad you said that, because I already recorded one of them, the 7th grade class, but let me double check here. I want to make sure I hit record, and I think I did not. Oh yeah, I did hit record. All right, so we are recording. All right, so yeah, this exact thing will be up there. And again, I appreciate what you said, guys, because in my videos, I've always said, learn to stop the video, go back, listen to it again. I know how difficult it is to write everything down, listen, and understand at the same time. All right, that's why I think I'm happy that we've been doing the videos. You can look this information up, and you can see exactly, if you have problems, how to solve the problem. All right. Okay, so let's check out number 4 now. All right, so for question number 4, let's start out by saying A equals 1, B equals 8, and C equals 3. So now we're going to write X equals negative B plus or minus the square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So let's plug in now. X equals negative 8 plus or minus. Now, B squared is 8 squared, so that's 64 minus 4 times 1 times 3 all over 2 times 1. Now, I really wish, if you're having trouble, that you would speak up now and say, I don't know what you're doing with those numbers. All right, as soon as you're not sure, please speak up. All right, now it's just a matter of, let's do the arithmetic. So X equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, now 4 times 1 times 3 is 12. So 64 minus 12 over 2. So X equals negative 8 plus or minus square root of 52 over 2. All right, now we have to decide, can I break 52 down? All right, is there a perfect square? And if you recall, 4 times 13 is 52. So 4, because it is a perfect square, all right, we're going to pull that out. So we say X equals negative 8 plus or minus. Now, what's the square root of 4? 2. So that comes out as a 2 square root 13 over 2. All right, now's the time. I'm going to reduce the fraction now, but now is the time I need you to speak up if you didn't understand any of the arithmetic there, or how I broke down the radical. Anybody? Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look carefully at divided by 2, divided by 2, and divided by 2. So your final answer is -4 plus or minus 1 radical 13 over 1. Now, is it necessary to put over 1 and the 1 in front of the radical? The answer is no. So let's not do that. So your final answer is just -4 plus or minus square root of 13. Okay? Everybody good? Okay. So now, next, all right? A equals 3, B equals -6, and C equals 2. Then I'm going to write down X equals -B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop for about a minute, and I want everybody to plug the numbers in, do the arithmetic, try to break down the square root, and then let's see how well you're doing. All right, I got my little clock here. I'm going to pause for 1 minute. All right, everybody try it. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to see how much you're doing. All right, please speak up. All right, some of you guys. All right, if you're not sure. So let's do the substitution. So X equals, now, -6 plus or minus 36 minus 4 times A times C all over 6. All right, now if you're good with that, if you did that correct, you're in pretty good shape. All right, now we have to do the arithmetic. So we say X equals 6 plus or minus. Now here we go. We have 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. So 36 minus 24 all over 6. So X equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 12 over 6. All right, does anybody have any questions with that? Anybody have any questions? All right, now we're checking on how well you can simplify the radical. And you have to remember 12 is what? 4 times 3. So X equals 6 plus or minus square root of 4 is 2 radical 3 over 6. Now what we're doing is we're looking at the 6, the 2, and the 6. All of those can be divided by 2. So we have 3 plus or minus radical 3 over 3. Okay, guys, now's your time. Anybody have any questions, concerns?
Wait, how did you get the 3 plus radical 3 over 3?
Okay, so my first question to you is this. Do you understand this part right here, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so now what I did was, kiddo, all I did was I divided, I'm gonna make my tip finer. I divided this by 2, this by 2, and this by 2.
Oh, okay.
Right. Now remember, this could be a 1, but it doesn't, it's not necessary, okay?
Okay.
All right, so you good?
Yeah.
Anybody else, guys? Come on, please speak up. All right, please speak up.
Mr. Stroud,
Yes, sir.
where did you post a worksheet? I can't find it.
Well, it was posted on the previous class, not this class, but the previous class.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thanks.
That's all right. Go look at it. Go find it. Get it on your notability. All right? And let me know if you still can't find it, okay? All right, here we go. So let's check out number 8 now. All right. So everybody's going to put A equals 1, B equals 4, C equals -6. All right. Now everybody practice X equals -B plus or minus the square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. All right, so again, I think it's a good time now for me to pause, give everybody a minute, and you see what you can do. Recording. Okay, so let's take a look now. Let's see how things are going. All right, so let's plug things in, see how you're doing. So X equals -4 plus or minus square root of 16 minus 4 times 1 times -6 all over 2. So X equals -4 plus or minus 16 plus 24 all over 2. And so now that equals -4 plus or minus square root of 40 over 2. Now we break that down. -4, because remember 40 is 4 times 10. So plus or minus 2 radical 10 over 2. And now final thing. All you have to do is look at the 2, 2, and 4 and say, hey, they're all divisible by 2. So your final answer is -2 plus or minus radical 10. All right. So somebody tell me now if you have any issues. Anybody have any issues? All right, guys, it sounds like we're in good shape. All right, let's take a look at number 10. So A equals 4, B equals -8, C equals 1. Again, I'm expecting everybody to write the formula just so you'll learn it. X equals -B plus or minus B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. All right, let's pause and let you guys give it a shot. All right, guys, let's see how you're doing. All right, so X equals 8 plus or minus 64 minus 4 times 4 times 1. Everybody okay with that? All right, let's see what the next step is. Now this is just 16. So 64 minus 16, 48 over 8. All right, guys. Anybody have any objections to that so far? All right, now the tough one, 48. All right, I'm asking you to remember that 48 was the same as 16 times 3. So now the square root of 16 is 4. So 8 plus or minus 8 plus or minus 4 radical 3 over 8. And then we can divide everything by 4. So that's 2 plus or minus radical 3 over 2. Okay? All right, somebody's got to tell me. Speak up. How are we doing? That's the quadratic formula. Okay.
For a second, I didn't get it.
Yeah. Tell me, where is that good?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions with that?
Thank you, Mr. Stroh.
Hey, you're welcome, Jack. All right. Now, the next is you have to decide. You can factor by taking the square root. You can factor by, you can solve by factoring. You can solve by using the quadratic formula. I'm going to try to now go through the next set of problems and show you when and how to determine what's the best action to solve the quadratic equation. All right. So number 12, because there is only a square term, to me, the easiest way is just to isolate the square term. So we would say 4x squared equals 25, and then x squared equals 25 over 4. All right, now please, we're getting into some times where you have to make decisions, and I want your help. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions? All right, so now from there, to solve a square, we take the what? Square root of both sides. Now, remember, when you take the square root of a variable, it's plus or minus. So x is equal to plus or minus. Now, the way I want you to think about 25/4 is this. So you would say plus or minus square root of 25 is 5, square root of 4 is 2. Okay, so there's your answer. Now, technically, it's not a big deal, but usually we write it like that. Anybody have any questions? Okay, so the first problem we have in number 14 is it's not set equal to 0. So the first thing we have to do is we have to move the 10 over. So 2x squared plus x minus 10 equals 0. Now, I always tell kids the easiest way is to factor. But the question is, how do you know if you can factor? So here was the rule. The rule, a quadratic can factor if you multiply the first and the last term together. All right, so that's negative 20. Now I want the factors of 20 to equal the middle term. And the middle term here is a 1. So are there factors of 20 that equal 1? And the answer is yes. You could do 5 and negative 4. All right, so we know it can factor. I don't feel like doing the quadratic formula if I can factor, okay? So now we're going to set this up as factoring. So 2 sets of parentheses. How do I make 2x squared? 2x and x. Now remember, we're looking at the factors of 10, 5, and 2. So the question is, where does the 5 and where does the 2 go? 2 cannot go on the left side because it can't be a factor of that. So I know the 2's got to go over here, which forces me to put the 5 here. Remember, we did the smiley face. That's 5, and that's 4. I want the 5 to be positive and the 4 to be negative. So there we have it factored. Now remember, it's just setting the factors equal to 0. Now you solve this. All right, that's mental math. I'm expecting everybody to just say that's negative 5 over 2, and x equals 2. All right, so now, anybody have any questions? Always try to see if factoring works, because factoring is quicker. Some of my kids like to just do the quadratic formula because they know they'll always get it right if they just use the quadratic formula. Makes no difference to me. Any questions? All right, good job so far, guys. Let's knock out 16 now. Now 16 is a square term. All right, this quantity is being squared. So I can isolate. So to do this, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And so now I have x plus 1 squared equals 9. Now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. When I take the square root of both sides, here's where most kids make a mistake. They forget the plus or minus. The square root of 9 is 3. All right. Now solving this out, we now subtract 1. Okay, so now I have x. The first answer is negative 1 plus 3. And the second answer is negative 1 minus 3. So again, x could equal 2 or x could equal -4. All right. Somebody speak up if they're having troubles with that. Any questions? All right.
I don't really understand that.
Which one? Who's that?
Carter?
Hey Carter. So now what I want to do is I want to kind of go back to the beginning and you kind of tell me where you kind of got lost. Do you understand how I got x plus 1 squared equals 9?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then I just took the square root of both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I take the square root of both sides, do you agree it's just plus or minus 3?
Yeah.
Okay, then to solve for x, I subtract 1 from both sides.
Okay.
You agree? Or do you want me to show you?
No, I get it now.
You sure?
Mhm.
All right, so a lot of times kids just are having trouble because we haven't really done this before. -1 plus or minus 3. And I tried to show you how that just means -1 plus 3 and -1 minus 3. All right, now that's good, Carter, because 18 is very similar. All right, so again, we're trying to isolate the x plus 1 squared. So to do that, I have to add 6, and then I have to divide by 3. So that's mental math. I want everybody to be able to do that. So on this one, we're going to do x plus 1 squared equals 8. Now's the time to speak up if you're not sure how I got x plus 1 squared equals 8. Nobody? All right, very good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of both sides. And when we do that, don't forget the plus or minus. So x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 8.
I know that's the hard part, right?
But you have to remember, 8 is also the same as 4 times 2.
There's something, of course, not right. There's something when we're doing kinetics, right? How fast chemical reactions occur.
Okay with that? Now, of
Colleague,
course, we subtract 1.
When he did his kinetics experiment, he had to get literally a straight line, right? Have you ever done linear regression?
That's it.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Value 0.999. In order for people to believe them.
All right. Next one. Very similar. All right. So again, just take the square root.
As chemicals that you could purify. So there's a lot of more.
Square root of 100 is 10. We're not allowed to write just 10 though. We say plus or minus 10. So now I'm going to subtract 3.
I mean, you have different levels of precision and different expectations, depending on which field of science you're doing as well. Right?
Then we have to divide by 2.
But I really think that global warming was a prime example of that would touch most people's understanding. Because the whole reason why we have debates about global warming.
Okay.
Is because the
now
temperature differences over the past 20 or 30
negative
years
3
have been very small.
plus 10.
And so people are arguing
7
whether it's significant.
over 2. Then negative 3 minus 10 divided by 2. So the two answers are 7 over 2 or negative 13 over 2.
You know, I'm of the mindset that whether you believe it or not, whether you believe it's man-made or not.
Anybody have any questions?
Or whatever you want, it's happening. Right? Like it's happening.
Any questions?
You can see the effects of it.
Okay. Now, I threw this one in here. This one's not a quadratic, but I just was trying to show you how you have to just be careful. We know how to solve square roots. To solve a square root, we square both sides.
There are natural fluctuations in geological.
8 squared is 64. Now we add 4.
Proven throughout history, right? The question is, those things
We're going to divide by 2.
20,000 year time.
All right. right.
We're seeing it over a couple hundred years.
Anybody have any questions? All right, so that one's just different. And I threw it in there just to make sure you know how to look at a question or look at an equation and say, how do I solve it? We're always trying to work backwards.
The issue here living in children.
All right, now what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about these last 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to get you started, but then your homework is going to be to finish these up, and I'm going to take a look at the last 4, okay? So this is a proportion. So to solve a proportion, you're supposed to cross multiply. So this would be 2x times 3x minus 2, then cross multiply this way, equals 3, okay? Now, it's not set equal to 0, so you have to set it equal to 0 by multiplying that. So that becomes 6x squared minus 4x equals 3.
Right, exactly.
Now, because it's a quadratic,
Island thinking.
we're going to subtract 3.
Only last for a couple more years. I'm sure you've heard of the Maldives, right? I mean, there's
Okay. Now we're going to determine if you can factor this. All right. So we're taking 6 times negative 3, negative 18. Now, are the factors of 18, is it possible that they equal negative 4? So let's look. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6.
And when the last hurricane came through for the Bahamas were.
And so, sorry about that. So now if we look at this, none of those can equal negative 4. All right. So again, we cannot solve that. All right. We cannot solve that. All right. Using factoring. So we're going to use the quadratic formula. All right. So solving the quadratic formula, we're going to say A equals 6, B equals negative 4, and C equals negative 3. And then your job now is to use the quadratic formula. All right. Number 26 can be done by factoring. And this right here, I want you to write down, this is a double root. All right. And then I want you to try to remember why I decided it was called a double root. Let's look at 27. Now, 27 is a linear problem. It's not a quadratic. Now, how did I know that? All right, I knew that because there's no way that's to the x to the first, x to the first. So linear is just a fancy way of saying an equation that is just to the first power. Quadratic is x to the second, okay? So your job now is to try to finish 28, 26, 24 independently, turn it in. I'll kind of look at those to see how you're doing. Notice all of the work I've done now. All of the, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even see 30. All right, so 30 is just isolating the square root and then squaring both sides. All right, so I'll be taking a look at 24, 26, 28, 30 and see how you're doing. If you've done the odds, all right, or if you weren't sure, but now you know, go back and review. Guys, I promise you this is, I know I always say how important math is, but you'll be doing this in your calculus class. All right, in every single math class, you'll be solving quadratics. All right, you have to be an expert at that, okay? So now, if you think you understand everything, you're free to go. If anybody would like to ask me a question or has something they would like to ask, I'll be happy to stick around and answer any question. All right, if you're leaving, all right, I'll see you next time and stay safe. Does anybody have any questions?
Is this due next class?
Yeah, you can turn it in next class period, Thomas, but just get it done when you can, okay?
Okay.
All right, and odds, please listen to the video, guys. If you're struggling, listen to videos. And if that's still not good enough, I can set up a private Zoom with you and kind of work slower or help you so you're doing a good job. You guys need to be ready for high school. All right. No one cares about this. All right. They just want to know what you know and what you can do. All right. Anybody have any questions? All right, guys. You guys take care. Have a great day. I'm still hanging out. So if you have a problem, you can still ask me a question on Classroom. All right. You guys take care now. Have a great day.
Mr. Stroud,
Take care, Jack.
take care.